You're listening to the Sonic Ninjas podcast. Follow us on Instagram at the Sonic Ninjas and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sonic Ninjas.
Yo. Hello. Bradley Dean.
Oh, shit.
Bradley Dean. Hey, we're live, buddy. What's going on there? And you got your Facebook Live on. What's going on here? Bradley Dean. What is going on? Are you jamming right now? We're live already on Facebook, my friend. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
Maybe just a little.
Did I interrupt you? I did. I think I did. It's all right. Hello, everybody. Facebook. What's going on? There's Bradley Dean. I guess we interrupted your jam sesh.
Okay. I was trying to kill time before we... That guitar was made by my next door neighbor, Pablo Oliveras.
Oh, yeah? That's cool. It sounds killer.
Yep.
Say the name again of the guitars because I cut you off by accident.
It's Valoy Guitars.
Nice.
The first one made.
Really?
Yeah.
They sound killer. What are you running it through? Right now it's running through what?
Got it running through a Marshall JCM 800 amp, which is powering a 212 cabinet that has vintage 30 Celestions in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then it's going, what mics are you using on it?
It's a 47 and a 57.
Nice.
Yeah.
Through your Apollo?
Through my Apollo. Yeah, that's just straight. No, actually, it's going into my Warm Audio WA 412 mic pre's.
Very cool. Those guys make great stuff too, man.
No EQ, no anything, just straight to the pre's.
Oh, I love it.
It sounds good.
Well, it seems like you have a collection of guitars behind you anyways.
Well, two of them are not mine.
Okay.
There's a Frank Jones. They belong to Frank Jones. He's actually recording here with me in a band called The Arrival.
Uh-huh.
So he's got a gold top and I think it's a Iced Tea Burst, I think is the other one. And then my two, the one on the left is a Les Paul Kalamazoo model, which is one of 1,500 made. It's a 79. My dad bought it for me when I was, 17 then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't born then, but okay, I believe you.
Then there's Hamer Thunderbird body basses back there. Those were made for me when I was playing. I've got a few instruments hanging in here.
You were in the band, and I don't want to butcher the name of the band again, but what band were you playing guitar on or singing and when you were a rock star?
The very first band was Rat Zalad, and then I joined a band called Kicks, and then I joined Wrathchild, then Souls at Zero, and then Back Alley Gators.
Which one was the most famous one out of all of those? Kicks? Was it Kicks or?
Yeah, Kicks was popular. Of course, they got more popular after I was gone. Not because I left, but just because that's, it was the third record and the big hit was on the third record. But, yeah, I guess. I mean, Wrathchild did good. It's just, we had a larger audience than we had a record buying public for whatever reason. Whether it was the label, I don't know. But that's it.
That's cool. Well, today, since we caught you jamming, fortunately the topic is guitars, so we can discuss a little bit about that. I like that you were playing those guitars made by Pablo. That's pretty cool. Is that usually your go-to guitar, like a Les Paul kind of?
Yeah, I love Les Pauls. It's my favorite guitar.
For rock seems to be like the...
Yeah, to me, that's like the guitar of my childhood. I saw Joe Perry and I saw Jimmy Page. I was like, Les Pauls. Like, I think the very first act that I saw play live when I was probably 10, maybe, the guy was playing a black Les Paul. And I said to my dad, I want that guitar. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, now I have a black Les Paul. It took me a while to get it, but yeah, it's just that guitar says rock and roll to me. That's the one.
Well, that's the same one. I mean, Slash uses Les Pauls, and it was pretty amazing when I got to mix him and the tone that he gets with his guitar straight up. Just plug it in, crank it up. let's go, you know?
That's it. That guitar's plugged straight into the amp.
I mean, there's something about that I think, and I know that's something that we're probably going to elaborate as we go through today's episode, but that sound that is the most natural, most organic, simplest way of getting it. You just plug in, turn it up, and you get a certain tone. You know, yes, there's emulations, yes, there's software, but there's something to say about that particular sound that is just direct, straight in, nothing in between, or, you know, it's like the AC/DC sound, all that kind of guitar straight in, you know.
Gibson SG, there's another fine instrument.
Yeah. I mean,
Angus Young, one of the first guitar players I heard, blew my mind.
and that tone also, that tone is pretty, I don't know, man. It's not even as distorted as some of the other they're a rock band, but when heavy metal came out, it's not even as distorted as that, but for some reason it sounds even bigger.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, his amp is not that distorted.
No, it's just overdrive. It's like a lot of overdrive per se, seems like. It's not like just super distorted, like very, you know, like heavy metal. It's just a different kind of tone. But to me, I mean, that's something that makes a big difference. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to experience both, have the whole transition of using amplifiers with band members and anything from like the rock guitar players, like we were talking Slash, that I had the blessing of working with, and all the way to like Smash Mouth, you know, Greg Camp, an amazing guitar player. And when I first started working with him, he used to use AC30s, I believe there were just a couple, and their specialty, and his specialty, I should say, his sound is very vintage and very like old school, you know, 60s, and he captures all those sounds with not one digital pedal. It's like everything's just organic, and it's got the old reverbs and delays and slap delays, and he's doing everything just live, not with just a touch of a button. Everything's there. Everything's plugged in and coming through the amp. And was it exactly the same every day? No. But did it have his signature sound? Absolutely. Every night, every show, there was a certain signature sound. It wasn't exactly the same. Every now and then I would chase levels, and that happened with any guitar player that it wasn't, you know, running a pedal, you know. So that's a plus, I think, in some ways. That's, you know, it kept us on our toes, trying to like make sure the levels were all good and everything, but it's a certain sound, man. It's a certain sound.
Only a certain sound. And how, you know, you talk about keeping you on your toes. I mean, remember mixing in the club days, and you've got the full back line on stage, and the guitar player is just raging. And that guitar amp sounds so good, but you know, it's so loud, and you just have to mix around it.
And you don't have enough PA to go over that sometimes.
Oh, so that's where I used to like stand out in the middle of the floor, and I would have the band play, and then I would try to get the level on stage to be as even as I could.
Yeah.
And then I would back out front and supplement that mix with the PA.
Yeah.
You know, vocals and a little drums or something just to fill it out, because it's kind of difficult to actually ramp the guitar up in the system when it's already, you know, tearing your head off inside the room.
Yeah, but it's an important thing to work with him too. Like in those situations, of course, we're going back a little bit, but in those situations where you're in a venue, it doesn't even have to be a club, because, like I said, this band that I work with, where Slash was in it, was Kings of Chaos, which I think we spoke about them before. It was basically Guns N' Roses without Axl, so it's the full band. Duff is playing bass, and you got Gilbert Clark on stage right and everything, and it was like a wall of sound coming from that stage, man. And we played this. It was a tour in South Africa, and we played, you know, like medium-sized arena. It was like a 10,000 seater maybe, and it was so loud coming from the stage. And I was like, do I really go to Slash and tell them to turn it down? Do I really go to Duff and tell them to turn it down? I'm not sure if I want to do that. They were sweethearts to work with, don't take me wrong. It's just, you know, there's certain things that you kind of don't try to do. Or I did see the opportunity maybe to work it out with the text a little bit. Oh, let's try this. Let's lower the level here a little bit, just because we're getting a little bit out of hand. And they will work with us. You know, they will really certainly try. But there's a certain comfort zone that they have, that,
Oh yeah.
and the way the guitar reacts at a certain volume for them, for I guess feedback and sustain and all those things. So at some point we just got to let it be, and it's not a bad thing, because the big pictures just sounded amazing. You know, it was one of those things that's when the magic happens.
Speaking about not wanting to ask somebody to turn down, I got to mix the Colt.
Oh yeah.
Well, Billy Duffy his amp is on stun, and it sounds incredible. And of course, you know, I'm thinking, man, if I could just get him to turn down a little bit. And of course, I'm talking to the backline guys, and they're like, "How is everything?" I'm like, "Everything's great. It's just Billy's a little bit loud." And they're like, "Whatever you do, don't ask him to turn down. Just don't ask him to turn down." And I'm like, all right. So one day Billy said to me, "Hey, how is everything?" And I'm like, you know, if you could come down just a little bit, the people on the left side of the room would be able to hear you. I could turn you up more in the PA. He's like, "Oh, okay." Because as soon as I said, "I'll turn you up," he didn't have a problem with it. Because I used to have to set up. I would set up on house left because he was on stage left. And I would just have to be out of the way of the wall of Marshall. Otherwise, I would I'd just hear that in the room.
Wow.
But
But it was the way you presented it to him.
I didn't just go, "Oh yeah, you need to turn down. You're too loud." Because then he would just be like, "Well, whatever."
Yeah, you can't do that. That's part of our job. Also, is the psychological portion of it. You can't just jump in and tell a huge artist, "Hey, do this." They've been doing this for years, one way. You know.
They don't want to hear that.
No, but the way you presented it was perfect, because you go, "Hey, you know, I want to be able to turn you up on this side, and if you do this, then I can turn you up even louder." Oh yeah, that sounds good. Cool.
"Oh, I'll be louder. Sure, I'll do it right away."
Yeah, I mean, and there are artists who try to help, and they're open to it. Their band members are open to it, but then as they're playing, and this is mostly, I guess, back in the day when there was mostly wedges and stuff, but as they're playing, they kind of feel like, "Oh no, I kind of need that security blanket, maybe, or whatever you want to call it," and they just go and turn it back up, and we just, at that point, we just deal, you know.
Yep.
Someone here, as we were talking about the AC/DC tones, he goes, "Please tell the cover bands that, so sick of hearing oversaturated guitars playing AC/DC."
What was I playing when you interrupted me?
Exactly.
Oh well. Yeah, hopefully it wasn't oversaturated.
Next time I won't interrupt you. I'm sorry I interrupted your jam session. We just, people were waiting for us to go live. Our whole audience is waiting, So
And what was I doing?
what are you doing? Just jamming?
I was actually back there thinking, I need a Plexi 50 to go with this cabinet. That's what I need. Something with no preamp, and I can just crank it up and get that Malcolm Young guitar sound.
See what I'm saying?
What I was thinking about.
But it sounded good. And well, I mean, the other thing with guitars is they have a certain sound as far as even I've noticed you can have a guitar rig set up one way. All the settings of the amps or whatever, pedals, whatever. And you have one guitar player, and then you have another guitar player come in and play that same guitar, and it sounds completely different.
Yeah.
It's in the fingers sometimes. It's not just.
No.
It's
definitely all in the fingers.
How does that affect us also as engineers? I believe that, sometimes if we have a tech or something or someone who just spends a lot of time tweaking the sound, and then we already know that it's going to change when it's going to come, when the actual player comes in, and we already know what that sound does, then it makes no sense to just keep going on and on and on, something that we know is going to change when the real player or the actual player grabs that guitar, right?
Sometimes you're just better off just bring up the faders, everything works. Tweak if there's any weirdness you have, tweak it, whatever, and just wait for the guitar player to get up there.
Yeah, I mean, we have, depending on the project we've been working on, most of the time we're very fortunate to have techs that they can play the instruments, or they're going to at least hit it as we're checking stuff. and play it the way their guy plays it, right? So that's also a plus. But for the most part, sometimes let's make sure we got it. We got the sounds. Okay, cool. Let's wait till they actually get here and play. You know, the other stuff about, since we're talking about certain guitar players and guitar sounds and things, for us as engineers, I think working with them, trying to capture that, the sounds that they use on the albums, and make sure they translate through the PA on the in-ears. I know a lot of guitar players, usually at least the ones who started late, hated going through the in-ears from a microphone. It was a struggle. Like, you have to really process certain things, make him create certain distance between where the mic was capturing the from the speaker, capturing the sound from the speaker. It wasn't a pleasant sound to hear it so direct in your ear. So, I used to add, play with reverb really short just to create space or kind of spread them out or whatever. But getting those sounds is important. I think it's in working with them, not just in volume, because now you and I, as you know, with Enrique, we don't have an issue with volume with guitars. So now our job is mostly finessing the sounds. Like, oh, this one might be a little overdriven for this part of the song. When it comes to the PA, it doesn't really translate, or maybe it needs more overdrive, or maybe take the delay down. Like, I remember we had a situation before when something happened where somehow the delay was a little loud when they're doing a particular lead, and they were like, oh, let's turn that down, And we discuss it, of course. We got our musical director. They go, what do you guys think? And you tell them, no, it might be a little loud, and they check with me too. "Oh, it's a little loud, but not so much maybe for me, or maybe it is. We all agree on something, and then we work it together to finesse those sounds. I think it's important to have that good relationship between engineers and guitarists, because their sound is pretty crucial to whatever we're doing.
Exactly. And I'm not afraid to turn a guitar up in the mix.
We know that, and we love it,
Just, I go to that point where it's there, and then I just find myself just going just a little bit further sometimes. And, when you get that balance and the guitar is just on the edge and then the vocal sits right on top of that, there's like this power to the mix, I feel. I just love turning the guitar up.
Well, and then we're fortunate too that we get to work in the Enrique camp. We have two guitar players, and each guitar player has 3 different guitars. They each have a nylon, a steel string, and an electric. So it's pretty, interesting how they're all, blend well with everything. But that took a while. That took a little bit of working on rehearsals and fine-tuning things, and because all the guitars come out of one stereo unit, right? So it took a little bit of fine-tuning, but it worked out. I think being able to process that the way we do, I think it's I don't know. I think in some ways it's made our life a lot easier. And now we're entering, I guess, with this part of the conversation, we're entering, kind of straying away from amps, and I'm kind of leading into, I guess, whatever will be the digital world of guitar processing. What's your take on that?
Let's see. My take on that.
You hate it. You want amps everywhere.
You know what? My first introduction to, I'm trying to think when I first started using digital guitar rigs, and it might have been with Garbage, and everything was digital. But you know what I found was that consistently, night after night, the sound from song to song was identical every night. And there was no stage volume to deal with. And I realized with the right amount of EQ and a little bit of processing, you could take the digital edge out of that sound and kind of warm it up. And once I got used to that, it didn't really bother me anymore. Because I realized that I could pretty much do with, whatever I needed to do with it. And then when I worked with him, he had a full rig on stage, but I ended up taking, 3, I think it was radial JDX boxes, and captured his amps from the JDX. and I put one mic on one cabinet. So again, all my guitar sound there is mostly DI and then one microphone, just to give it, a little bit of different flavor. And now with Enrique, it's all digital. And I can honestly say that I don't miss it at all.
Yeah, same for me. I think when we did that switch, because it was maybe a year or so when I started with him about 8 years ago, that I think it was instrumental to make that change, because then the guitar players themselves, first of all, will have a stereo guitar for each guitar. They were able to program all the reverbs, delays, choruses, whatever, not just for the electric, but for the nylon and the steel string guitar as well. And have all those effects and everything just the way they like it and the way whatever they needed for the music. And that was something we didn't have to do on the console. We didn't have to add choruses or stereo imagers, delays, reverbs, or nothing, because it already came to us very well, what's the word, like processed, if anything.
Yeah, more or less.
And then the other cool thing about it is the program changes, which is pretty useful for us. On those big stages, the guitar player could be on the other end, and they're playing, and it automatically switches to the solo patch. There's all MIDI and everything, and part of it with the tracks. So I think all those are pluses, and we're able to do also. Hey, last night when we did the show, because of this new guitar that you have, I think on the patch for this song, you need to maybe take a little bit of mids down a little bit, so that way everything remains consistent. Mm-hmm. And our band members are so open about it that it makes it very easy. We have a great relationship with them where we're able to discuss these things, and sometimes they'll go, yeah, but if I do that, I might need a little more level in my ears. No problem, easy fix. I think that's very important to have that relationship between the engineer and guitar players, work with them on the sounds, especially now that it's digital world. I mean, Metallica, who is, a gigantic heavy metal band, they use digital amp emulators, which I'm not sure if it's Kemper or Fractals that they use, but they use one of those. And that's a big part of their sound, but it keeps it consistent for them everywhere.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, consistency.
That is the key, consistency.
I welcome that stuff. To me, having the ability to do all that stuff makes a big difference. The same way we do, with anything, having our digital consoles makes our life easier because we can save things, store things, move presets around, snapshots or whatever. Same with the guitar players. They're able to switch between patches and go through things, switch within a song, have 3, 4, 5 patches if need be, with different effects. I don't know. I think it makes a huge difference, and it keeps the stage quiet.
Yeah, exactly. Quiet stage.
Quiet stage.
Quiet as you can make it.
Quiet, yeah.
Of course, if we're talking about Motley Crue or The Cult or Jane's Addiction, the stage is anything but quiet.
That is true. Let's see. I think we have a few guitar players here that joined us. Let's see. We got... Oh, Travis is here too. Not a guitar player, but good friend of ours. Dan Kenny's here. Let's see.
John here. He's a friend of mine. Was in a band with him for a little bit.
Right on. Eric Schramm, amazing guitar player as well. Stanley Suarez joined us. Alex Garcia, great friend of mine too. Amazing guitar player. Let's see.
We got
Dylan.
questions?
I'm looking for them. I'm just taking advantage to say hi. Don't cut me off like that, dude.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go back to playing guitar if it's going to be like
Go back to play guitar. See, Juan Cristobal, Alex Garcia, this is one of the greatest rock and stones ever, Alex says, of course. Man, I seen Alex play some stuff too, like Jimi Hendrix stuff, like nothing, like butter, man. Amazing guitar player, Alex. James Hopkins, howdy fellas, William. What's your guys' take on speaker simulators? I wasn't a fan till I ran across a Palmer speaker simulator, amp mods, etc. We were kind of touching up with that, but go ahead, Brad, if you want to take that, and then I'll jump in after.
I used the Palmers on a tour. I can't remember what model or what what band, but the Palmer was fine. The one that I had the most experience with was the JDX. The JDX took the sound direct from the amp, and you went straight from there, which I think is kind of similar to Palmer as well. But yeah, they worked well for me. You know, I think I used red boxes too. Do you remember the red box?
Not sure.
Who made it? But I want to say when I worked with Machine Head, we had red boxes, and they had all like 5150 amps and the red box. And the red box sounded pretty good too, but it almost had that DI sound.
Yeah, a little like a buzzy sound.
I don't think the Palmer and the JDX had that sort of sound. It was a little more natural and open sounding.
Well, I think in general, all these companies have figured out how not to have that sound. I mean, I think the emulations are really good. Fractals are great, and that's what we use. Kempers are also great. I use those. We use Kempers with Gwen. We use Fractals with Enrique. When I was with Tear for Fears, they had these Line 6 amps, you know. So they had the brain built in, but it had 2 speakers on it too, and they sounded great. I mean, they didn't run it super loud anyways, but they were mic'd up and they sounded really good. And I don't know, to answer his question as far as what do we think about that stuff? Like I said before, I personally welcome it. I feel that a lot of times, you know, if we have an amp, great volume, great tone, we put a mic on it, and then we run it through our processing or in the console, whether it's EQ, compression, whatever it is. And the way it comes out, like we're trying to emulate something from the album, whatever, the way it comes out is already kind of processed. I think having these emulations or software or racks that do all this stuff just saves us a step in a way, you know, and it gives the guitar player more control of how or what sound they give us as a source. You know, if it's an identifiable sound, like we were talking about the AC/DC tone versus a heavy metal tone versus just a, I don't know, like a Rolling Stones kind of like, you know, tone, then they have control of that. You know, they can send it to us the way they want it. The other cool thing with these units is that sometimes you can have the left side be a Fender Twin and then the right side be, I don't know, a Boogie or whatever. You know, you can combine them in such a way like you will do live, you know, and it creates a different, I don't know, just a great combination and a different depth to it, you know, because you have 2 different emulations going on at the same time with no noise. You don't have to deal with power noises. You don't have to deal with like any, you know, speakers breaking or blowing up speakers or tubes breaking in transit. None of that.
That's the big thing.
Yeah, the way it sounded today is the same way it's going to sound tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Yeah. So I'm in favor of all of those things.
Because the biggest plus for me, I think, is that you don't have to worry about where the mic goes because you choose not to use a mic because you got a amp simulator.
Yeah, and some of them have a mic positioning too built into it. So you can actually say, I want my amp to sound like it's going through what you had, like a 67. What do you have there? Like, what mics do you have on your amp right now?
Right now, it's an AT4047 and a SM57.
Okay, so you can kind of choose which mics you want on it and even move them around to change the emulation. So I think these are all great tools that I think that's honestly nowadays for me is the only way to go. Obviously, if I'm working with an artist that has amps and stuff, well, great. You know, we'll work with them, of course, and not a big deal. But I remember even we were working with our guitar player with Gwen Liso, great guitar player, and she was using I think it was a Fender, and you know, one mic, and I was splitting it up in the console, doing that whole thing where you kind of slightly delay it, pan it, whatever, to create a little more depth. And it sounded fine, but then going through patches and things which were handled by regular analog pedals, then it was always not leveled. So in a show as we were running, it was very difficult to chase that because I'm like focusing on Gwen at the moment, and that show is very fast paced. So we came up with the idea, said, look, you know, what if we just go to a digital unit and we're going to start doing a bunch of one-offs. It would be great to not have to worry about the rental gear. That's another thing. Rental gear in other countries, and then you don't know how they maintain it. You don't know any of that. And having just to be able to plug it in and go, XLR out, line level to you, done. No DIs needed, even nothing. And we switch, never look back, man. We kind of just, I use virtual soundcheck to A/B the sounds and match the levels of where they should be. And we, like I said, we never look back. It sounds great. Everybody's happy. There's no level changes. They're able to fine tune any sounds as needed, store it on a USB thing, and it's done. So yes, I'm in favor of all that. Yeah. Let's see. Why do discussions about guitar always start with excessive volume? It's true. Because you guys are loud. Yep. I knew Alex was going to say this. Alex Garcia. He goes, yes, amps everywhere. And yes, I mean, this is, guitar players like their amps, and the ones that are really good at working them, then of course, bring it. It's great. We can use them, no problem. And for those who used to have the issues with in-ears using amps, and I've heard stories of people who say, oh, it doesn't sound as good in the ears, get everything sound. There's always a way. We have the technology to make it sound any way you want. There's no reason to say, no, if I'm using amps, I can't use in-ears. There's no, I find that to be not a good excuse. I think we have the technology to give you whatever you want in your ears, regardless of what, your source is. So, Bradley Dean, anything to add? I know I'm yapping here.
I was going to tell a story about when I worked with Garbage. And
yeah, go for it.
Pre-production, we had a month in a rehearsal studio in Los Angeles. And I had a Pro Tools rig, and I recorded rehearsal every day. And the next day I would come in and I would mix. Well, if you know anything about Garbage, there's a lot of different guitar sounds that happen throughout the music. And some songs can have upwards of like 6 different guitar tones. So, I sat in the control room. The tech was out in the room with the guitar player, and we would go through each patch of the song, and then of the entire set. And we probably spent 3 or 4 days going through sounds to make sure that they were all leveled out, that there were no weird, obviously level jumps, but nothing, weird EQ wise either. Because with everything being direct, all they're hearing is in their ears, and I'm hearing it in the context of, the song. It's like, okay, maybe that guitar is a little 2K heavy, or, so I had a smart rig going. I had a pair of near field, so if there's ever any question of like pinpointing the exact spot of the guitar sound, I could just look at smart and say, okay, 2K, bring it down like, 3 dB or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
And, but that's something I think you need to do when you come through the digital realm, is that just the whole taking the time to make sure that all the patches are, that there's no surprises.
Yeah, but you're able to do it though. You, from an engineering point of view, and also guitar players who spend all this time in the studio that know about a little bit about engineering, if not a lot of it, then they're able to say, you're able to tell them, can you bring down 2K down on this patch? Right. Where before all you had is, treble, mid, presence, or whatever, and bass on a head, right? Yep. This way you can get very detailed. Or if you want to add compression, maybe can you soften the attack, and they can do that, So all those things, I think, and being able to speak the same language with them, and them to us also is a good thing,
And that's the only way that it will ever work with Enrique, with having a steel, a nylon, and an electric guitar all coming down a stereo pair.
Yeah.
You have to work with the source. It would never work.
It would never work otherwise.
Yes, we could sit and program every little song to change what's coming at us, or we can go and change the source so that we remain consistent.
Well, in our case, it's stereo. It's just one stereo line. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Because when I do my class and I talk about, hey, Enrique has 3 different guitar sounds, and I bring them all down a stereo pair, and this is how I process it. And it's so minimal. And then I'll play the electric to the nylon to the steel and not change anything, whether it's a plug-in, I don't change a thing from song to song. And it's like, that's because we worked at the source. The source is changing. I put like a global sort of EQ and compression on the channels, and that's how it rides.
Yep.
But
that's because of the work that we put in before with them, with guitar players, musical director, and us.
You got to do that in the digital world.
You have to. Stanley has a question here. First, he says he left the chat. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Stanley, for joining us. What is
Stanley,
your
a few guitar players, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he does some cool stuff.
Devin Townsend.
Yeah, and then so he goes, "What is your take on ISO cabs?"
I don't mind an ISO cab. There's a bit of consistency there as well.
Yeah,
It keeps it clean. If you put the mics are inside the cabinet, and
keeps
like
the
you say, it's
volume
ISO'd
down.
off, so
Keeps the stage level down.
yeah, keeps stage level down.
I like that too. I've seen acts do it. I haven't really necessarily used it. The most I've ever done is face cabinets the other way. Either face just one small one to my guitar player and face the other ones backwards. Yep. And those are the ones that I mic, the ones that are a little louder. But as far as having isolated, I've seen artists that have it either under the stage in a box and mic is built in and everything. I think that's great. Anything that helps the big picture, I believe is great. Like if between the musicians and engineers and production people are helping make sure that the sound is great for everybody, including the performers and the audience, I think it's a win no matter what. So yes on ISO. James Hopkins says Rothschild was better and bigger than Metallica in my eyes.
Well, I don't know about bigger.
You have a fan. Alex, yeah, love you, buddy. Let's see here. He checks in them out. John Turner, 2 notes torpedo makes a good one. Let's see, huge kind of red box. Press through. Do you see any questions that you want to answer here? Groove Tubes makes an emulator too. Groove Tubes, I haven't heard that they make an emulator, but I guess they do also.
I don't see a lot of questions.
Not a lot of questions, a lot of comments. That's good, though. That's good.
Answering all the questions before they get them out of there, before they type them out.
Let's see. With the proper sound crew, you can take a 15-watt amp, mic it, and it will sound like a massive setup.
Of course.
Yeah, everything's possible. Have you used an amp for? Let's see who else.
Ivan has a good question there.
Go for it.
Can you share some examples or tricks to have a nice stereo image, or simulate this also when you have a mono source? Yes, I can. With Garbage, we had a mono source. Each guitar was a mono source. So what I did was I double patched the input, and then I put, I think, a 20 millisecond delay on one side. And that was enough to spread it out and give it, it was like a pseudo stereo image. And I mean, that just pushed it all out of the way for Shirley. And I did that for every song. It was like automatic. And I did it again. I did it again with him, with Lindy's rig, because he was using he had an amp, and I had a mic on the cabinet, and I had a JDX on the same amp. So that's a mono source. I did the same thing. I split those, panned them hard left and right, and 20 millisecond delay. So you always have to pan them when you put the delay on. And that does it. I mean, you can experiment with the delay. Maybe 20 milliseconds is too much. Go down to 10, whatever works for you. It's going to change a phase a little bit, but it was never enough that it bothered me, I didn't think.
No, because they're far apart, because you're keeping them pan anyways.
Exactly. And then what else I would do is I send it to a group, and then I put a Brainworks Digital V3 on the group, and I put it out another 130%. So my guitars are always pretty big and wide.
Yeah, that same trick. I mean, I used to use it on the studio a lot. Of duplicating it and delaying one by a little bit. Usually, I'll go even as far as 20 or 30, depending on the style or the sound that I'm looking for. But as long as they're far apart, then you're not going to have that phasey or chorusy effect. And yeah, it makes it wider. That's a easy way to widen your guitars if that's what you need to do. And that goes for in-ears too. Like I said, we used to do that at the beginning with Liso's guitar on the Gwen Camp. That we just needed to. It was just one mic coming to me, but I wanted to kind of widen it for Gwen's mix and for everybody's mix or whatever. So same thing, copied it, delayed one side, and then on top of that, I also added a verb that was very short, more like an early reflection kind of thing, very short, and I blended sort of a mix in there. I made it like, like the wet dry thing. I just had it like at maybe 10%, 15%, and all of a sudden just added a little bit of depth, so it doesn't sound so dry, in their in-ears. Because in their in-ears, they already feel maybe claustrophobic and stuff. But Mike Young makes a comment and says, some people resist in-ears, but they miss that it can make them a better player and singer. I agree. I think if it's done the right way and used in the right way, it's very beneficial to any performer. I think a lot of people confuse. A lot of performers have the issue with volume. They think that for them to feel something, they need to crank it. And once they crank it, they get a lot of other noises and a lot of bleed and a lot of it just gets loud. And then they get ear fatigue, and then they can hear. They're going to turn it even louder. So louder is not better. That's definitely my philosophy when it comes to in-ears. Gucci Barra joined. What's going on? Jason Reynolds, Jim Hodges. Always about the source, Eric Schramm says. You can't polish a turret. Do you find isocaps to be low, mid, heavy? Oh, kind of. He's following up. Eric Schramm is also following up on Stanley's question. If we find isocaps to be low, mid, heavy, personally, not too much unless the mic that you're using is capturing a lot of the cabinet itself. But if you close mic in a speaker,
yeah,
I don't feel that it affects too much of that. And if it does, then you can always notch it a little bit. But that sometimes there's a trade-off. I think sometimes that's a trade-off that you have to work around. What do you think, Brad?
I agree.
You agree? You don't have to agree with everything I say, damn it.
I'm going to agree with that statement.
You going to agree?
I agree.
Yeah. Shams, so China used to use a pair of cabs turned away from the audience and cranked up for front of house. Yep. That's what we were talking about earlier. Eric Schramm, great guitar player, good friend of mine. I believe he used to tech for Citriani. So that's why he knows some of this information. And my headphone cable keeps falling off for some reason. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Have either of you mixed with bias effects to get clean recordings or reamp? Have you?
Nope, I have not.
I have not either.
Nope, I've heard about it.
Yeah, I have not done that, but we're going to look into it for sure. See, this is what I like about this. The other day, Danny Munoz, he also asked us a question about a certain software that Plugin Alliance released. And even though we're Plugin Alliance users and lovers and we use most of the stuff, somehow we weren't too familiar with what he was talking about. And we went and looked it up after. So we're not just here to share information. We're also here to learn from you guys. So we love that. We love feedback and we love information of things that will make us better engineers. And we can always look things up. We can always learn from that. In fact, when we were done from last episode, I called Danny right away. He was like, what was that thing that you were asking about? Because I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about. And then we were talking about it. He goes, oh, yeah, I seen it, but I didn't go deep into it. And when he explained to me what it was, I was like, oh, man, this is going to be it. So we also learn from you guys. So thank you for that. VJ says, I think that some ISOCAP setups can be built up the low end because it's in a box.
True. I can see that.
I think Phil X had the issue with Bon Jovi. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on how the box is built, Let's see. Feedback Busters on acoustics and any thoughts. Bob Seger hates him. I'm his tech. And hey, Brad, I kind of knew you back when I played guitar for the Point in North Carolina, the Switch.
Yes.
You read that, right?
I see it.
Didn't you work for Bob Seger?
My friend John Turner.
Didn't you work for Bob Seger?
I did work for Bob Seger, 2006, 2007, and 2011.
So Jimmy...
But I don't think Jimmy was there then.
No? Okay, so he's asking what do we think about Feedback Busters. I don't mind them. A good guitar will sound good no matter what. I mean, it's the price we have to pay for having a massive PA next to him and at the volumes that we got to perform and screaming fans in order to turn up that loud. You kind of need that sometimes.
Sometimes you do need them.
Right?
They do change the tone of the guitar a little bit, but...
You kind of what?
They change the tone of the guitar some.
Yes, they do.
Yep.
But luckily we were able to... I don't think we have them on all of them. Do we use them on the steel strings only, or have we not used them at all lately?
I don't think we're using them.
But we have. I remember we have, because we used to have
I don't think we're using them on the steel string.
But I think it's because, again, we have the pedal, and we're able to really fine-tune frequencies that could take off. Those are gone, filtered, and everything. So, yeah, you're right. We haven't been using those. I guess we've been home too long. I don't remember.
So John Turner has a question.
Yes, go for it.
What are some good alternatives for a Royer R121 microphone? Well, I've used an R121 on horns. I don't know what I would compare to an R121.
Me neither.
I mean, I'm a big fan of large diaphragm condenser microphones for guitar.
And for your voice, apparently.
What's that?
And for your voice, too, apparently.
No. I mean, Warm Audio makes an 87, which I just got, and sounds incredible. AT has the 4060 and the 4050 and the 4047. Those all sound great on guitar. I know Coles makes a ribbon mic that sounds really good on guitar as well. And I think AT also has a ribbon mic. I think it's called the 4081, which I've used in here on guitar, but I also paired it with a couple other microphones, but it sounded good as well. But that Royer mic is definitely a good one on guitar. Something about the mid-range with that microphone. Sounds great.
And I think it's good to have combo mics. I mean,
I like combo mics.
I think it's good to have two colors, combine them to create another color, or sometimes in a certain moment, for the verses, use one color more than the other. For the choruses, use either the other color or both. I think it's great to have a combination of. Gooch, good friend of mine too, he was our drum tech with Tears for Fears, amazing drummer, musician. So he goes, in the studio I've been recording more old school when recording guitars. Ribbon and a 57 on an amp. How do you feel about a hybrid, Kemper or Helix? Any suggestions or tips on that? Yeah, I mean, I welcome all that stuff personally. Get the real thing mixed up with, as you're recording the amp, record also a Helix or record a Kemper, or just record the DI and run it through, whatever software of your choice in your DAW,
Mm-hmm.
Or reamp it or do it. Yes. I mean, what do you think about the combo of the real guitar with the emulation?
Well, why not? I mean, with the real guitar and you put the mic in front of the cabinet, I mean, you're moving a little bit of air. I think it's a little bit different sound than a Kemper. I mean, in Universal Audio, I've played with some of the amp simulations, and they're great and they sound good, but I don't know, there's something about the amp sound to me that's just it's different. Maybe it's not better, but it's different and I like it. I mean, why not have a mixture of sounds that you can pick from later on?
Yeah. I think that's a good question, because you're not short on tracks or anything like that in your DAWs anymore. I think If you have an idea that you might want to experiment with something, why not? Just do a hybrid. Now, if it's in a live situation, same thing. You know, now we have plenty of inputs, not an issue. If you want to have an amp and also running through a Kemper or a Fractal or Helix, whatever, then do it and blend them and you know, or use one, favor one over the other, depending on where you need, you know.
Microphones on guitar amps is a good subject, for
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Didn't really get there, but now we are.
Yeah.
Because we don't mic amps anymore with Enrique. It's all direct. So the fun for me in the studio here is to try different microphones and combinations. And
It almost seems like a novelty because we haven't done that in a while. You know, it's oh, you're miking guitars today? Like,
exactly. But when you put the right mic in front of a cabinet and you get the mic in the right spot and you bring the fader up, man, it's, you know, right away. It's like, yeah, that's it.
so you're going to have to, when we're done with this today, you're going to have to play us out too with some riffs again.
Play out with riffs.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. I think the people want to hear it. William asks, it says, I asked Brad years ago, like in 89, what he used for an amp. He said straight into an old CS800. I was baffled as a new bass player, was expecting a bass rig answer.
Okay, well, my amp was, there was a PVCS 800 was the power, and there was a PV preamp. And that was my rig, believe it or not. And people are like, how did you get the sound? Like, where did that sound come from? I'm like, I don't know. It was that white Thunderbird back there on the wall. The the Hamer Thunderbird, loaded with EMGs. And where is it? One of these.
Yeah. Oh, Carlos, hide.
Called a pick. And when you put a pick across a bass, that's the sound.
You're going to get in trouble. Shame on you.
Trouble? Because I play with a pick.
I don't even think Carlos is watching us today, but anyway, we love you, buddy.
Busy
Let's
with
see.
something else.
Yeah, you got to have a pick. I mean, come on. I mean, okay, so, and that applies for
you don't
bass.
have to have a pick.
Well, you don't, but I think I like, for instance, I mean, you know, we love our bass player, Joe. I mean, Joe Yu is an amazing bass player. So, not to drift a little bit, but he can play anything, just, you know, fingers, he's all like this and sounds amazing, right? It just has this great tone. And then he'll switch to a pick and he will have another really good sort of aggressive tone to it, but controlled in a way. It's not like he's going off the rails playing like heavy metal. It still fits nicely into whatever pop stuff we're doing. And that comes again to the musicianship, you know, like I think it's important to have that ability, that skill, that mindfulness to play to the music, no matter how you play, where you play it. Man, how many rock bands played ballads and the bass player had a pick? Boom, boom, boom. You know, like, it's not like you can't play something soft or a ballad without a pick. So anyway.
For me, I graduated from guitar to bass, and I played guitar with a pick, so I was going to play bass with a pick. I wasn't even going to pretend to want to play with my fingers. That wasn't for me. It was the sound of the pick.
Let's see, what else here? 12-string bass. 12-string bass, King's X, any thoughts? I have a feeling you have an answer for this, my friend. Go ahead.
Here's my answer to that question, right here.
Look at that.
What do I think of 12-string basses? I love them.
Just plug it in.
No, here's the thing about the 12-string.
Oh,
You got to play with a pick. It's not the same with your fingers.
no, hell no.
So, there you go.
Sounds killer.
That's what I think of that.
Dave Rooney, what's going on, buddy? Let's see.
Oh, you know what else is a great guitar mic?
Yeah, go ahead.
414.
Oh, yeah. 414, you can do anything with a 414.
414's a great mic.
Acoustic guitars, electric guitars, I use it on toms, overheads, anything, with snare.
Okay, so here's a question then.
Yeah.
You could only have one microphone.
See, that's now you.
What would it be? I can tell you that I think I would choose a large diaphragm condenser.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you can do anything with it.
But what microphone would it be?
What would yours be? See, I'm reversing. I'm sending it back to you.
I'm posing it as to both of us.
I know.
I think that's a tough one.
That's a tough one. Because there's other things to keep in mind. One mic live, one mic in the studio, one mic for everything, live and studio. Because if you think live, then I wouldn't choose like a big studio mic like a U87 because
Right.
it won't be handled right live. It will just break at some point or it'll be mistreated. So.
But a Desert Island mic in 87 might be a good choice.
Yeah. That's a tough
251
question.
maybe? I don't know.
I love the 251, like the one you have there. I like, you're going to think I'm crazy, but if it was going to be one, I was going to say 57. I know you were thinking I'm crazy, but dude, you
could build a hut with it too. You could use it as a hammer.
No, dude. I mean, it's just, I'm thinking live studio, everything. If I had to do everything every day with just one, it's tough, man, because we have so many mics that we use for different things, different colors, different approaches. That's a tough question. So I don't know if I could answer that.
Yeah. I had a guy mix my band and all we used was 57s and 58s. That was it. That's all we had.
I mean, they're great mics. I know sometimes you make fun of them, but they're great mics.
Brendan O'Brien did the Dogman record, the drums with 57s on the toms.
See? Listen, this is what you and I always go back to this every time, Bradley Dean. We always go back to the music. When people are listening, they could care two shits if it was recorded with, Neumann or 57. If they're feeling something when they're listening to that music,
that's true.
That's all that matters. So, and also, of course, if it was engineered right and if it was mixed right, of course, it helps. My point, it helps the translation part of it. Like supposedly Tom Petty's vocals were always recorded with 57, and that's what he used live as well. So, I think it's a matter of opinion sometimes, and it's going to be hard for me to choose one, to be honest.
Yeah, I see a couple people over here going SM7.
Yeah, that's true too. Dave Rooney, he's they're in the band, both Daves, two Irish guys, amazing guys. They have a movie out on Amazon, and I just mixed one of the songs that's going to be their new single. They're great guys. Check them out, the Black Donnellys. They're great dudes. M88 and Kick. Yes, go ahead.
I've never used an SM7B. So, but what I hear about the whole issue with being low gain. I know, I'm probably going to add one of those to my collection. About the gain being low and you really got to jack it up, or you use one of those things called the Cloud Lifter to...
Yeah, I have another one called, it's a Fathead something, and it's great. It's like $80, Amazon, boom, done.
Pump up the gain.
And the level is just perfectly hot, perfectly normal. It was really low gain, obviously, when I first started using it. I was like, what's going on? And I would just run it from one pre to another. Mm-hmm. Not a big deal, but I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to just plug it in. So now I just have it installed there and it just goes, That's a great mic too. I've used that on snares. It's great on vocals, people who are really loud vocals. Yep. Or if you really want to have the proximity kind of sound,
So are you saying that a 57 would be your Desert Island mic?
You're putting me on a spot. Here's the thing though. Yeah, man, you choose one. I dare you to choose one. You can't. How could we?
414 might be a good choice.
414 is a great choice. It's a very versatile mic. You're right. But I like the warm audio stuff. I like DPA.
Yeah.
Shure. But Shure has a variety of mics that they're kind of define what they're used for in a way. But
what about a 2011 or a 4011 DPA?
Yeah. 2011 would be able to use for anything.
Yeah, and there's no coloration with the microphone because the response is linear.
Yeah. See, we're setting up ourselves for failing at this question because each of these mics that we're mentioning, they all have a certain thing that we like about it, or a bunch of things that we like about them. So that's a tough question. Who asked that question?
A tough one.
Who asked that question so we can block him?
Who it was now? I saw it up there.
No, it's a good question, man, and I don't know. I'm not sure how to answer that. Plus, you called a mic that I was thinking of choosing a hammer, so I don't know what the.
Yeah, but you could use it as a hammer. I'm pretty sure.
Now, Gooch mentions, of course. Oh yeah, Gooch mentions 50 Cent's probably the most used mic of all time.
It probably is.
Yeah. Our pop ears might be used to that sound. Yeah, maybe. Let's see what else. Yeah, low gain. VJ says low gain. Yes, Chris Hogan. What's going on, Chris Hogan? Multi-instrumentalist, great friend of mine. Michael Jackson, Thriller. Tram mentions that Michael Jackson used the SM7B for Thriller.
Yeah.
I did not know that. John Turner.
Uh-huh.
Brad, you did a stellar job on the Kicks Rocky Gap live recordings. How did you handle Brian and Ronnie's guitars? Is that the live one you did a couple years ago or something?
Yeah, that's the one I was finishing mixing in the
In
hotel room in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So he's asking, how did you handle their guitars?
Well, I didn't record the show, so I don't know what was used to record the guitars. I just got to mix it. And it was trying to think of what I might have used to process those guitars. It was probably...
You must have had a digital V3.
You know what? I don't know if I was using a digital V3 back then.
How long ago was that?
2015, I believe, when I mixed that. I think I used Phoenix, Crane Song Phoenix plugin, and oh man, there might have been a Plug-in Alliance compressor that was similar to an LA2A, and it was an opto compressor. I can't remember the name. It's got a red GUI to it, and I don't think it was much. Compression, EQ, and I was a big fan of the Crane Song Phoenix plugin, just for different types of saturation, different styles of harmonics, and that was probably it. I know I had to do a little bit of tuning with the guitars.
Because their intonation of the guitars from song to song or something, or?
No, I think the show was outside and it was cold.
Ah.
Tuning fluctuated. So there was a little bit of elastic audio going on, I think.
I do remember that project when you were working on it. I remember it sounding really good too.
Yeah, I mean, I had, Mark Schenker called me and said, "Hey, can you mix this?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I'm thinking, how many songs? I think it was 8 songs or 10. I can't remember. And I'm like, "What do I got? Like, a couple weeks?" He's like, "No, you got 3 days." Or it was 5 days or whatever it was. It was like half as much time as I like to have, because I like to have at least a day per song when I'm mixing, But thank you for the compliment. That was a lot of fun to mix, because I was in the band. I kind of knew the gist of what was going on, and it was fun.
Let's see. Some Jimmy Madigan. There's 414 on one speaker and a 57 on another. Yeah. You know what's funny with that? I used to do that, having either a 414, 57, or whatever combination of a large diaphragm and a 57 in different speakers, and then I grew out of that because I like having the source being from the same place. I mean, having the same source, because there's a risk of this speaker not pushing air in the same way as this one. That's one thing that maybe I'm crazy, and also in traveling situations, you don't know how the Backing company's treating these cabinets, and I've encountered many times traveling and doing one-offs where you have a 4-speaker cabinet and one of them is wired out of phase, and then you don't really notice it until you mic one and the other, and then you go to front of the house and they're like out of phase. You're like, how can it be the same cabinet? And then you move this mic to one, perfect. And then they open that box and they see that one was wired out of phase because someone did it in a hurry or for whatever the reason. So at this point, no matter what, we don't have time to troubleshoot that. I just go to one speaker and put both mics on it, Try to align the capsules as much as you can and roll with it,
When I did Motley Crue for just a short time, and I filled in for their engineer Andy Meyer, there was 414s on every one of Mick Mars' guitar cabinets, 8 of them.
Jeez.
And they were all on. And it was the most incredible guitar sound. Straight out of 1985, this wall of Marshalls with a harmonizer. He had this whole rig, everything in there. There was no effects for me to put on the guitar because it was coming to me. It was just a massive sound, but it was all 414s.
Wow.
I don't remember there being any other mics on the guitar cabinets.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to say about that. Where just blasting wall of sound of cabinets. I mean, it's cool, but
yeah, but it was outdoors in amphitheaters, and
at some point, it's just. I think back then you had to deal with it. I don't think you have to deal with it now. You can get that same sound, and I'm sure I'm going to get some backlash for saying this, but I think now you can get that same sound with an emulator like Kempers or Fractals or whatever.
I don't know. Mick Mars' guitar sound was pretty unique.
I'm sure, but I believe that there's always a way if there's a will, my friend. Let's see. Stanley has a question here regarding mic placement. What is your approach on distorted guitars?
Well, I'm usually where the dust cap meets the speaker, like in that spot on the seam, is kind of where I'm going to go for. Now, with a large diaphragm condenser, a lot of times I may go straight on the center of the speaker. Depends. Then obviously if it's a bit bright, I'm going to slide it over. But I'll start generally in that spot. Usually large diaphragms are going right in the center, and maybe the 57's going on the seam. Maybe I'll go off axis with the 57.
I used to do a couple of things. I used to have 2 of the hammers, 2 57s, and put them like an XY, I guess, and literally just like this with the capsules perfectly aligned, and it will give me a little bit of depth. It wasn't like just left right. It will kind of give me a little more of this, right? So I kind of like that. People would always think, "Oh, that looks weird. Why are you doing that?" But it kind of works for me, right? Then of course the usual, large diaphragm and a 57 or so, and same thing, kind of off the side a little bit of of the dust cap, right? So in that sense, we're very alike. In the studio, however, I used to not be so close to the speaker unless I was really looking for something really dry. But I used to just go back at least 6 inches to try to capture, let the whole thing really shoot air out, not so close, because there was nothing else bleeding into it. And then there was a time when I used to record some metal stuff and metal local bands or whatever in the Bay Area, and I would even mic up behind their cabinet, like behind a Marshall cabinet, behind a Bowie cabinet or whatever, put like a D112 or something just to get that whoa, that low. Flip the phase and just like.
Yeah.
Eventually, I kind of grew out of that. I found it to be not as necessary, but yeah, I've tried all of that kind of stuff, and you know, I guess it depends on what worked for you. What are you looking for in the project? You know, there's no rules. That's the beauty of what we do. There are no rules.
Exactly. I know for live, one of my favorite guitar mic combinations was an AT4050
Yeah.
and a 57. And a lot of times I would just use the 4050. And then I discovered the 4047, and it had a very similar sound to the 4050, except it didn't have that little extra bit of, I think it was 10K that the 4050 had. But a lot of times I just go one mic on the guitar.
Yeah. I mean,
Less
like
is more.
Less is more, my friend. Let's see. Gerardo Cabrera says sounding with acoustic guitar with a pick is different because the strum factor of the movement of fingers while strumming. Yeah, I mean, there's a difference. If I understand his comment, playing with a pick on an acoustic guitar gives you a different tone
Yep.
versus doing it with just your fingers, and that's something. My wife Cielo, she plays nylon guitar, and of course we use nylon guitars with the guys. And Enrique,
Walkout.
I'm sorry,
Bring her in for the walkout.
I should.
Yeah.
She's gonna be like, "Why you put me in a spot? You should have let me know." And then I'll be on the doghouse. No, so one of the things that I've struggled, because I know her since I was mixing her and stuff, and she plays nylon guitar, and she's picking with fingers and just picking, and it sounds beautiful and warm or whatever, right? We set that sound, and then all of a sudden she goes into like strumming, like this kind of Latin rhythm or whatever, just strumming it, and all of a sudden it just sounds not great. Not because she's playing it wrong, but just because, especially if you're going direct. If I'm miking it, it's not a problem. I'm talking about going direct, with pickups.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have that luxury that, like I said, with the pedals, when the guys are picking, it could be one patch, and when they start strumming, it goes to another patch, and not an issue. But when you don't have the luxury, it's hard because certain guitars don't translate as well direct versus acoustically, like miking it. If you mic it, it always sounds beautiful. But if you're going direct, I always find that I either chase myself changing the EQ when they're strumming versus picking, or if they're always strumming and you EQ it for strumming, then the picking sounds muddy, So that part is hard, and that's something that I had issues sometimes. But again, now with technology, you can either have a EQ setting that you can click in and out depending on what's happening at that moment, whether it's strumming or picking. But
Dynamic
yes,
EQ.
what's that?
Dynamic EQ.
Or dynamic EQ. But if you don't have that luxury, but yes. So, let me see. Pretty awesome. So, yeah, Eric Sham is mentioning, if I remember, Jeff Ganford. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, he was the mixer for the Tubes. I believe he was a great mixer, great guy. I actually learned a lot from him, and about filtering certain things on the PA. He had a very interesting concept for that. And then he goes, he used 414s on my Super Reverb. Pretty awesome sound. Yeah, do remember that. How do you feel about putting a mic on the back of an open back cab?
If it sounds cool, why not?
Yeah, same as I was mentioning about miking the back of the Marshalls and stuff, which it was barely any sound going that way, but which is more of a rumble. I have mic'd the back of a Fender cabinet or whatever, and if it sounds good,
certain sound to that too, as a different than coming out the front.
Yes, absolutely. I always believe that our profession allows us to try all kinds of things. There are no rules, and I think even if there was a rule, breaking them is pretty fun.
Exactly.
Let's see if there's anything else. I think we're getting close to the end, my friend. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everybody, right? Do you see any other questions? But before I forget, because I didn't say it at the beginning, I want to thank Jeff Suber, which is another great guitar player, for letting us use his music. The music you heard earlier was from his project Petrito. You can check him out on all the digital platforms. Thank you, Jeff, for that. Great guitar player. We were talking guitars. Hopefully he was here. I'm not sure if I saw him here, but thank you for that. And Brad, are you going to play us out or what? Play a little riff for us.
Show you this guitar, though.
Okay.
This is some fine craftsmanship right here from Pablo, my next door neighbor.
Look at that. Is that the one you were playing?
I was playing.
That's beautiful.
Beautiful. And this is it's a model of a 54. Gibson 54.
Wasn't he set up in NAMM too? Didn't he have his booth in NAMM or something?
I have a setup at NAMM, yes.
Well, check him out next time. Hopefully there'll be a NAMM this time.
I think there's only one of these.
Ah, and you have it.
I think it's got, I don't know if you can see it. There you go.
What are you trying to show me? Because I remember I had to crop you to fit in here.
Put my name on the truss rod cover.
Oh, look at that.
You put a little skull on there to match my skull ring.
Look at that.
Thank you, Pablo, for this fine instrument.
All right. Well, with that.
Take us out, Eddie.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bradley Dean.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Instagram, Sonic Ninjas, and also Fixing to Get Mixing, El Brujo Caipo, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We have all these episodes that we've done in the past, and YouTube. All right. Take us out, Bradley Dean. Play a little something.
Back wild.
See you guys. Play a little something. Go ahead. Play something, man. Go ahead.
Let Jeff take us out.
All right, guys. Bye.